Alright, so these are the things that surprised me as a first-time Type R owner. Now, I've owned quite a few Hondas in the past, but never a Type R. This is my first one. So there were a few things that kind of, at the end of the day, I thought I was buying a normal Honda, and it's made by Honda, so I figured it would be a Honda. But this car is very different from any other Honda that's made. So the cost of parts for this car. Now, like I said, I've had other Hondas. I've bought the tire protection package, and I've used the tire protection package. I've actually used it so much that even if I keep buying it for every new car I get and never use it again, it's still probably going to be cheaper than the money that I've saved by using the tire protection on other cars. So with this car, it's actually already had a new rim and tire on the passenger side front. And I was on the highway, hit a brick or a pothole or something, destroyed the rim, destroyed the tire. So right there, that was about $1,200. So the tires alone are $400 to replace. Depending on where you get them, they're in the ballpark of $400. By the time you mount, balance, and everything, it's right in that $400 range, if not more. And then the rim, the dealership is selling for $750 plus tax. So this car is not cheap right off the bat. Now, I went in to get some clips. You can see I put in these pieces here, which kind of block off the vents. And I broke some clips. And I went to get new clips and took about 3 different types of clips before I found the ones that fit. The guys at the parts department didn't know which ones I needed, and eventually came out and looked at it and was like, oh, okay, we have those. The ones they gave me before were specific Type R clips. I guess some of the clips on this car use different clips than other Civics. And the guy was like, oh, you have a Type R, it's going to be these. Got 5 clips for like $20. Now, I know the dealership kind of rips you off, but I needed them right then and there and ended up getting them. They were the wrong clips. I didn't end up using those clips, but $20 for 5 clips is kind of crazy when you can buy a whole pack of them on Amazon for, I don't know, 50 of them for $10 or so. So it's just things like that that add up. I know this car is meant to be more of a race car, not really a daily driver car that never sees the track. So of course you want your parts to hold up. But it is something to think about, that parts are more expensive for this car. So we're going to go for a quick drive and talk about some other things that kind of surprised me with this car. So the first thing is the handling. Now, I came from a 2020 Civic Si. If you've seen my other videos, I talk about that a lot. I have some videos with that car. And I had kept the suspension, tires, brakes, everything on that car completely stock. And it was pretty easy to lose traction in that car. I mean, even with TSP Stage 1, you could kind of give it gas, and if the clutch held, which we'll get into that later, but if the clutch held, you could lose grip in first and second gear in that car so easily. And so this car just feels so planted to the ground. And the car is still relatively light. I mean, it's only probably 200 pounds heavier than my 2020 Si. And it feels a lot more planted, which you'd think means more weight. But it's just the suspension geometry. This car also has no torque steer, or very, very minimal torque steer, which is really nice, because when you had a tune on the Si, if you floored it, you would feel the torque steer, and you'd have to hold the wheel. This car, so minimal with the torque steer, it's actually unreal. and it makes for a better driving experience. So that's definitely a plus for this car. But the suspension also has more settings in this car. The SI only had kind of regular mode and sport mode. And this car has technically 3 modes over 4 different settings, because you do have the individual, but you're still picking one of the 3 modes, either comfort, sport, or plus R. So I normally drive the car in comfort. Right now I'm in individual mode, which is set to comfort. And the car is plenty soft for me. I know there's people who are kind of changing out the module and everything to the Acura suspension module to try and get it a little softer. The car is a little hard, but it's perfectly drivable. I mean, I do this long drives. I just went over some potholes. It is a harder suspension at the end of the day, even in comfort mode, but it's not unbearable. I mean, if I go to plus R, I couldn't imagine driving this car only in plus R all the time. You feel every little bump. And I always used to joke and say the SI had hard suspension and break your back suspension when in sport mode. But that car had nothing on this car. This car, the suspension is way harder, but you can make comfort mode. And then when you want to put it in plus R, you just go into plus R mode. And it's way harder than the SI was. Now the car is tuned now, but even stock, things that surprised me: acceleration. I mean, this car will throw you back into the seat now. And that was the lowest tune. So that tune was as close to stock as you can get, and it's really not that much faster than stock when you're in the lowest TSP tune. So the acceleration is night and day. I mean, a 3rd gear pull in this car is just so satisfying. And my SI, if I wanted to do a fast pull, it would be 2nd gear, and you're going to top out at 57 miles an hour, which really isn't that exciting. But on this car, 3rd gear is where it really shines. The 3rd gear pull will pull all the way to almost 90 miles an hour, and it is really satisfying. This is just an absolutely fun car to accelerate in. And at the same time, when you're accelerating, you know the car's planted, going back to the suspension. So it's just a much better car all around. And of course, you're paying for it. If you can find one for MSRP, you're still paying a lot more than a regular Civic, but you are getting a lot more car. So the tuning ability on this car as well. In my SI, the clutch was always the part that needed to be kind of, I don't know, upgraded first almost, because you would do a tune, and I ran TSP Stage 1 Plus, and 2nd, 3rd gear, not even being in low RPMs, being after the bulk of all the torque, I still had issues where I would floor it and the clutch would just slip. So it seems like Honda kind of designed the Type R, which, of course, why wouldn't they? It's a race car. But they designed this car knowing that people were going to put some aftermarket parts on it, and you don't need as many supporting mods. I run the TSP tune on this car, absolutely love this tune, and I have 0 issues with the clutch. I know the clutch is solid in this car. I'm also not as worrisome with this motor as well. I figure that every car I tuned, I was going to be really nervous like I was for my SI, where if I did something wrong, I'd blow a hole in the block or some catastrophic failure with the car. But in this car, running 400 horsepower, just under 400 horsepower without the supporting mods yet, I feel like it is a much better platform to run on. And so it gives me a peace of mind knowing that the car's tuned, it's making power, but it's not going to explode, or there's going to be nothing really wrong with it at this horsepower level, which is really cool. You'll also notice from this video the road noise of this car. Now, this car has barely any sound deadening in it, if any at all, to keep the weight down, and it is loud. I mean, I haven't heard back this audio yet, but I'm using a DJI microphone, and I'm betting you can hear a lot of background noise with this car. Now, I'm going to try to edit some out so it's a little better, but there is a lot of road noise with this car, and that's definitely a downside to this car. So I know I've talked about it in a lot of my other videos, and so I'm not going to go into it in depth here, but gas mileage. I figured going from a 1.5 liter engine to a 2 liter engine, the gas mileage wouldn't be that different. And it really is. I mean, in my SI, I got 40 miles per gallon on highway drives. In this car, I'll be lucky to get 26. And I attribute that to it's a bigger engine, it makes more power. This car makes way more downforce than the SI did, being that it's a track-ready car. So it makes sense that it gets worse gas mileage, but I didn't think it was going to be that different. And it really is that different. I'm not complaining about it. Every one of you in my videos says I'm complaining about the gas mileage, but I'm not. It's just things that I've noticed. I absolutely love this car, and I've made quite a few videos on it now. If you haven't seen my other videos, please check them out. But I kind of go through a normal person living with a Type R. And by normal person, I mean, I'm not building this into a track-ready car, like where it's going to be a fully dedicated weekend race car. I daily drive this car. I keep it mostly stock. I do want to put an intake on it, maybe eventually put an exhaust on it. But for now, this tune is plenty. And that's all I really need it for. It's fast, it's fun, and it handles like an absolute dream. Which the final part of that is the shifting and the transmission. Now, this car just goes right into gear. The clutch grabs. It is so smooth. It's so nice. I'm in Plus R, so it's handling a little more aggressively, but it's an absolute dream to shift. And being young and liking to drive a manual, I'd like to drive a manual as long as I can now. Ever since I learned to drive a manual, I was hooked on it. So this is one of the last cars where, in this price range at least, where you can really get it in a manual. And Honda has top-notch transmissions, so my SI had a good transmission, but the Type R transmission is way, way, way better. And I absolutely love this transmission. So let's get a discussion going. Let me know what you guys think. If this is your first Type R, let me know if it was as different as you expected. I definitely did not expect this car when I picked it up. I bought it without test driving, as most people do, because they really don't let you test drive it. And when I bought it, they actually didn't even have it on the lot. I had to wait a few weeks for it. So let me know what you guys think. Was it a shock for you? Were you expecting it? Have you owned other cars like it in the past? But let me know what you guys think. Please give this video a like and consider subscribing. It really helps the channel. I've said it in previous videos, but the next thing I want to get is a draggy, and that way I can compare the stock times to TSP stage 1 times. If that video does decently well, maybe I'll get the fairable tune and compare fairable to the TSP tune, and we can see how both of them compare, because I know it's for the same car, but they tune a little bit differently. So it'd be really cool to do comparisons with the Draggy. So I take all the money that I make from YouTube and put it back into the videos. I'm still a smaller channel, so that doesn't happen as quickly as you'd probably expect, but it's definitely the next thing I'd like to do on this channel. So the more support you guys give, the better these videos can get and the more informative these videos can get.